everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, and I'm here to do the second part of sort of like a roundup of. Oh, there's a bug up there. There's a one. I've got a bunch of now. What they're called. We call them stink bugs. I don't know what they actually are because it's cold and snowy. They have come inside, and you can't squish them, which they're too big anyways. I wouldn't squish them anyways. I take them outside. But if you do squish them, they stink. So that's what they're called, stink bugs. Oh my. It's been one of those days. I didn't even look in the mirror when I sat down. Oh well. My point is that I did a tarot video already about decks that I purchased in 2017 and what I still am thinking about those. And so I need to do the same thing, or I don't need to, but I'm going to do the same thing with Oracle decks. And one deck I don't have still anymore, which is the Oracle of the Secret Grove, or Mystic Grove, I think it's called. It's a small, beautiful color deck. The color palette is stunning. I'm pretty sure it was pre-existing art. It didn't quite work for me, but I knew somebody who would love it, and so I had passed it on to them already. So that is not one that I have in my collection. I really loved the color palette on it. I really loved the little booklet, actually. I thought Arwen Lynch did a fantastic job, pulling Oracle out of pre-existing artwork. And so I think she did a really good job with that. So it was one I was happy to pass on to somebody. It wasn't like, oh, I don't like this at all, so I don't want to pass it on to somebody else. I was happy to find somebody who would enjoy it. So there's that, but I do have a pile of decks. I actually purchased more Oracle decks than tarot decks this year, which is not generally like me. I don't tend to do that, but I think I feel I have a lot of tarot decks, and so trying to find Oracle decks that I love is a little bit harder for me, and so I think the hunt was on, so to speak. I do have a couple Lenormand style decks, not very many, because truthfully, this was the year of Story in Color Lenormand, so I started painting this. I don't know the exact date, but I was most of the year from January on to when it was released. I was either painting it or I was releasing it and working with it, all that test driving it, everything that goes with my own Lenormand deck. So obviously that's where my focus was, and I actually didn't purchase a lot of cartomancy style decks in 2017 because it was the year of the Story in Color Lenormand, which still excites me. It still excites me. I use this deck, obviously, it's my primary Lenormand deck. And every time I put it on the table, it just makes me incredibly, incredibly happy. So that's why you're not going to see very many. I do believe that I purchased this in January. I have it on my list, so it must have been in January. I love this deck. This is the 1889 Lenormand. It was one of my first decks when it was called the Game of Hope. And I have the small size of it, so it was one of my favorite decks, and probably one that I used the most early on in Lenormand. After I think the second deck that I purchased after my main deck, which was the Botanical. So she recreated it, and it has literally one of my all-time favorite backings. And it's just gorgeous. It's matte gold. I mean, it's just perfect. It's gorgeous cardstock, gorgeous matte gold edging. It's beautiful. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful deck, period. The box, just gorgeous. So yeah, so I purchased that. Definitely not sad that I did so. Very happy with that. I also purchased the Everyday Oracle, which is the Vera Sibilla Italiano. I had a couple other Sibilla decks before I purchased this year, but they had differing imagery. This is the imagery that is closest to the way that I like to see it, which is pretty much the same artwork as the Sibilla Original from 1890. And so I purchased this for another version of Sibilla. definitely happy with that. I use this actual deck a lot. And when I do like to get that one out as well. But it's just so beautiful. It's an older version in the ribbon tied thing, and I don't really want to mess it up. And it is very glossy too, that particular cardstock is. So I do tend to use, when I'm doing Sibylla readings, I use this one. So I'm really happy with that. Again, these decks are so cheap, it's kind of hard to ever regret something like that. And this is really an oracle, but I think it goes in with cartomancy. But this is the Mildred Payne's Secret Pocket Oracle. I've already done a few videos on this. I've done videos, not on all, but on most of all of these decks. So I'm not going in depth, doing reviews. It's more like, what do I think about them? And I have the expansion as well for this. I'm not going to go into this because I've babbled a lot about this deck. I absolutely love it. I did a video about showing the expansion and going through the balance of the deck and how, so I think a lot more balanced than people realize that it is. And so, definitely no regrets. Really happy with it. Happy with that I got the expansion. If you put another expansion out, I would probably get it, although it's starting to get quite fat for how small it is. I really, really, really hope and wish that he puts it out in poker or bridge size playing cards. That would make it a perfect deck for me. So those are that's really it for the cartomancy style decks. So on to regular oracles, right? So these are not in any order of having purchased them. They're just piled in here, and I'm just going to kind of grab them and go. So there's not any order to them. These next two I got together, and I do not have a walkthrough of these. I promised to do one. But these are the Goddesses and Sirens and Gods and Titans by Stacey DeMarco and Jimmy Manton doing the artwork. And these I've really not used very much, to be honest. And in all fairness, I got a good deal for these together. And I knew that I was likely going to have an issue with them because they're a little, more than a little, dramatic and maybe in my head kind of romance novel, over the top, dramatic imagery. But I will say, I actually really am impressed with some of the balance in the deck on the Gods and Titans. I like the Gods and Titans more than the Goddesses and Sirens, but I haven't really used them a whole lot either, because I don't know that I see myself pulling these for. I'm gonna have to try some of this a little bit in the live chats. Maybe we'll have a live chat of pulling from these two decks. I love some of the imagery. I love Jimmy Manton's artwork. I love, love, love them. Poseidon, I always see Poseidon older, but he was young once. So I'm not going to do a review. I do need to do a walkthrough of these. I don't ever use them. I kind of knew that when I purchased them, but there's just so few decks that are masculine, kind of divine masculine, or at least an oracle deck, sorry, let me qualify. So few oracle decks that are divine masculine, or at least balanced feminine and masculine energy, that I just kind of felt it compelled to at least get the one deck, and there's more than one, but to get the one of the few decks that are. So I do need to try combining these and actually using them a little bit more, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to set them over here, though, because I'm going to do a walkthrough of them. Those I could see very likely not staying in my collection unless when I do my walkthrough, which generally I do, and that sort of triggers whether I'm going to work with something or not. So maybe it was my mistake in not doing a walkthrough of them right away. So we'll see if that miraculously causes them to be something that I use, but I don't know. That one I'm still iffy on. So the Secret Language of Color cards by Ina. I don't know if it's Ina or Ina Segal or Segal. This, I kind of thought I would like this more than I did. And I'm not giving up on this one. It may be more of a summer deck. but we have images that are based kind of on color. So we have lavender as connect to the body, mind, and soul, pink for letting love in, blue activate your healing power. It's a little too positive, I guess. It's definitely affirmative, but it does give you, it's more action oriented, which is kind of a good thing, right? Instead of just like, you are wonderful, you're just where you need to be. It's like, regenerate your body. So go do something physical, do something, with your body, improve your wisdom. So go do something that's going to improve your mind and your wisdom, overcome your challenge. The phrasing is active. Do this, do that, right? Attract abundance. That's kind of hard. Okay, thank you. I'd like to, kind of thing. Be spontaneous and have fun. I don't know. This just never really clicked for me, to be honest. I think that the image is beautiful. I think the colors are beautiful. But it just, some people really love this. So I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it. I think I look for very specific things with Oracle decks. And for whatever reason, this just hasn't inspired me to use it at all. I don't even know if I've ever used it for reading. Just kind of meh. I didn't pay very much for it. It's beautiful. So I'm not giving up on this one. It just may. I think I got this near the end of the summer when I went into a phase of just like color, because my deck is very color oriented, and I was painting and I was swatching colors and finding paints and things of that nature. So I was really embedded in color. And so I got it at the time of that, but it just didn't quite do it for me. I'm hoping this one does. I'm not giving up on that. In fact, I'm going to leave it out into my out pile. So that brings us to the Celtic Tree Oracle, which is by Charlene Hidalgo, and the illustrations are by Jimmy Manton, because I love Jimmy Manton's artwork. I really love this deck. Now, I have an OM deck that I used, one of my very first decks. It is also called the Celtic Tree, which I'm sure it's out here somewhere. But, so I already have one that I use and I love. But I have to say, the guidebook for this, I think, is really great for people who want to get into OM. It gives you some nice chunk of correspondences, has keywords. If I had to pick a guidebook, I might pick this one over the other one. There's not very many good OM decks, so if you're really going to get into OMs, I say buy them both, because I do love both of them. But if you could only pick one as a new person, I might choose this one just because of the guidebook. Now, I have completely trimmed this down. This was much bigger, and I trimmed it down to just the images. My main fault for this one, this particular deck, is that it's a deck of OMs, and the OMs are microscopic. Like, they're so small. I wish that those were much larger part of the image, because that's kind of the point. I do wish that there's a classification system in OM of chieftain, shrub, or peasant, and I kind of wish there were at least some dots or something that showed that, but I can easily do that myself with a metallic marker. But they're beautiful images. I mean, they're so beautiful. One of them I have out. I put these out, on my space when I'm working with a particular one. So right now, Elder is on my working space. But they're just, they're gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I think that some people, wish that there were keywords on here, and I think that would be helpful. I think these probably would have been easier for somebody that's just going into OMs if they had sort of at least some kind of a keyword to put you in the space of what that energy is. So I think that would have been helpful as a beginning deck, but then also there always runs a risk, because this is a pre-existing system. So other Oracle decks that have keywords that's their own system, right? But when you take an existing system like OM or Tarot or something like that and put keywords, not everybody might read it the exact same way. And so that can run the risk of people like, oh, I really like that deck, but I wish you hadn't stuck keywords on it because that's not how I see that. So, you know, it's one of those things that can go either way. I mean, look at the C card. This is one of my favorite OMs, but look at the picture or the the painting. I mean, he's an amazing artist. I really do love his artwork. So I'm really happy with this. Very happy I picked it up. I know I'm going to have to move faster than this. So bad, so bad. This is actually one of a newer ones that I purchased. This is the Shamans Oracle. This is a reprint. I was waiting. You know, I went to get this deck and then it was out of print. And now it's back in print. And so this is the Shamans Oracle by John Matthews and Will Knightley. And I love this deck. I've been doing a lot of readings with it. For clients, I have an ancestral reading that I'm using with it. I have a web reading that I've started using this in the roots of the tree. Sorry. I love this. It's based off of cave paintings. It is redrawn from cave paintings all over the world. I do believe that there are a couple maybe that are problematic as to the accuracy of the cave painting, or at least one of them that I know Kayla had brought up. But I have to say personally, it's more the system. It's less the image, which is wonderful, and it's wonderful to have those there, but the system of suits with the shaman and the hunter and the spirit and the ancestor, and then the different types that they are, it's really beautiful. The system for this deck, for me personally, is beautiful. I do wish it was on better cardstock. It's already chipping quite good. I have used it a lot. But it's definitely, I think, gonna not hold up well with lots of usage. But eventually, you know, I figure I actually like these little borders because they do highlight what, you know, because on my ancestor one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I end up having 5 out. And so I like to be able to see, visually and by color, see the different, which you can see also in the middle or in this little icon. So that's going to be there as well. But yeah, eventually I can just trim this down to the image. And but I'm going to wait until it gets chipped worse, because that way then I would kind of give it a refresh. So other than wishing that the cardstock was better, it kind of, I can't riffle shuffle it very well. It kind of hurts to do that. So I do wish the cardstock was better, but it was not an expensive deck and I love it. So yes, that is 100%. In fact, the box is empty because that goes out here. Actually, it stays on my working space because I use it a lot. So that's one. Another new one is the Moon Oracle of the She. The reason that I purchased this was because I was talking about that deck, and somebody had noted that the same people, John Matthews and Will Kingham, had another oracle, and this was this one, and they ended up having this without any booklet or anything for $15 on Amazon. So I thought, I'm going to pick it up. This one I like. I've not used it a lot, but it's not as well made. You know, doesn't seem to be from an actually publishing company. I think it's by, you know, kind of self-produced by them. And the cardstocks, in some ways I might like this cardstock better than the other, to be honest. But the images, yeah, actually I prefer the cardstock shuffleability wise. But there's something kind of a little bit fuzzy about the images, and they don't quite seem so crisp. But it's quite interesting. I haven't used it enough to form a big opinion on this, so I'm not saying one way or another, but I have used it just kind of in conjunction with other cards. And you definitely have to, well, so far I've had to look in the guidebook to get just at least an idea of what's going on. But you'll see even with the numbers, they're a little bit, sometimes, I don't know, it just doesn't look quite polished and completely polished of a deck. But I have gotten interesting, powerful readings from it. So I'm just going to have to work with it more to give any kind of real good review. But certainly I'm not disappointed I bought it. And I perceive, or I feel as if I probably will get some good use out of this. So there's that. This is also a newer purchase. This is called Earth Wisdom Oracle by Barbara Moore and Christina Scagliotti. I have not used this very much, so it's hard for me to say. There are some things I don't find the imagery, to be amazing. Some of it is. Then some kind of looks more like photo manipulation. And then there are some that look more like a, kind of a painting-y style. There's a little bit of mix of types, but then some are really beautiful. Let me I think this is really beautiful. This isn't the best camera for this. I am going to do a walkthrough. This is over on my table to do a walkthrough because people want to know. And sometimes I'm not sure about the keyword choices and things. But what's nice about this deck is that it has a crystal and a plant that is attached to it. That's why I purchased it. There's a crystal and a plant that is associated with it. I kind of wish that was right because you often can't tell, or I can't tell. So I do kind of wish, like, underneath understanding it would say, citrine and whatever, just the name of the plant and the name of the crystal right on the card. I kind of would have liked that, even probably more so than a keyword. So this one I'm kind of iffy on. I know some people like Larissa from the Bard's Lament, and I tend to, go with her suggestions. She really likes this in usage. So I have not used it enough to have formed I love this. I haven't used it enough to form a great opinion. It doesn't scream to me. I didn't have a strong, oh my goodness, I love this, I can't put it down. Like sometimes, I have, Miss Bella had gotten me Days of Creation for my birthday, and I've literally not put that deck down since I got it back in September. And so, sometimes there's decks like that that's just like, oh, I'm so in love. Or the Shamans Oracle or the Weaver's Oracle, which I'm going to talk about, where it's just like, I can't put this down. It definitely hasn't had that reaction, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to have a place. So this is still, I'm kind of up in the air. And I'm also a little bit disappointed in the guidebook, just because because it's Los Scarabeo, you really only have about 38 pages. This amount of the book is the book. Now, generally that doesn't matter for me for Oracle decks, because to be honest, a lot of times I don't use the Oracle or the guidebooks. But one of the selling points to me for this deck is Barbara Moore's name. I love Barbara Moore guidebooks. So it's really disappointing. It doesn't feel like a Barbara Moore guidebook, to be honest. So that was kind of disappointing. Even though I kind of knew that. Some other people had said that. But I thought, oh, but it's Barbara Moore. So this one needs a walkthrough, and also I need to spend some more time with it. So you can see, Oracle for me is much more hit and miss. I don't think there were any other than the Good Tarot in Tarot that I was kind of like, And actually, I just realized I forgot a tarot deck I bought this year. I forgot. And I haven't done a walkthrough of this yet or done anything, so I can't really say anything about it anyways. But I did purchase the Yanessa Yao Oracle or tarot deck. So I missed one. I'm slipping it in here, and I can't say anything about it because I literally have done nothing except for get it put in order, because it didn't come in order. I do like my tarot decks to come in order, but because then I have to put them in order before I can do a walkthrough, and then I'm sitting there seeing them, and it's not my first impressions. But I have it put in order, and that's all I've done. So it's beautiful. I don't see it probably being a big, like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be my next main deck, but it is beautiful. Anyways, I don't know how I got there. But anyways, most of my tarot decks I was pretty happy with. Oracle is always, for me, a little bit harder to drive home into that, oh my goodness, I love this deck, right? I do love this deck. This is called the Magical Times Empowerment Deck by Jody Bergsma. She has another Oracle deck, which is Spirit of the Wheel I think it's Spirit of the Wheel meditation cards. That's been on my wish list for a while. I need to pull but I looked back and forth and I decided because it's the same artist. So I thought, I'm going to get this first because this would work for what I wanted it to do. And then if I really love the artwork, I would go ahead and get the other one. So I definitely will be, probably won't be this year. I'm not probably going to get any other this year, but that's probably one I will get because I actually really love this. Now I bought this on purpose to be empowered and empowering hugs for the this time of the year, which is difficult for me. As most of you know who follow my channel, my son passed away, will be 4 years on the 13th. And so December's just difficult. So there's a lot of other things that go into why that's difficult leading up to the passing and last memories of Christmas trees and things like that. And then just holidays in general. So it's really difficult. And so in the last, you learn as you go. And I've learned that December is just really, really a bad month for me. And so it was the month of his birth, the month that he passed and the month that he came into life are just really hard. And so I've learned, or I found, that having a specific deck that I work with that is supportive. I don't really need a heavy hitter. I just need something that is just kind of supportive, does actually really help me. And I work with that exclusively over that month. And I have found that to be an excellent way to sort of preemptively get on top of that energy. And so I purchased this for that purpose. And I actually really love it. I think that when you don't use this, it can be a little bit more heavy hitting. Not heavy hitting, but there's some oomph there. There's some empowerment, as it says. And I quite like some of the keywords. I love the imagery. I think she's a beautiful artist. And so I've actually found this to be really lovely and a deck that I foresee myself using more. So that was a happy one. I thought it would just be, okay, this is a nice little hug deck. But I think it's a little bit stronger than just that. I do think the use of the term empowerment is good. Is an apt phrase for this deck, even though it kind of visually seems more huggy. So I still need to do a walkthrough this as well. Apparently I'm going to have a lot of Oracle walkthroughs to do. That brings us to the Pythia Botanica Oracle by Layla and Olive. I have the Oracle, or the tarot deck. And as I said with the tarot deck, and I'm not gonna, beat it down. I was disappointed in both of these. They weren't cheap decks. They're beautifully produced. Again, you can't beat this matte gold, soft, creamy, matte cardstock. It's gorgeous. The box is gorgeous. Like everything about it is beautifully done. It's just kind of flat. Now, some of this could be because I was really, again, in a flower color craze at the time. Just bright colors, saturated, rich colors. And it doesn't have that. It's a very muted color palette for flowers. It's quite muted. And so, yeah, it just didn't. Now, I do use the tarot deck in a very specific way for a reading that I have. But these are probably ones that I won't end up keeping just because it's one of those things you just don't know. This is Patrick's fault. He convinced me to get these. And they're beautiful. There's nothing wrong with this deck. And that's true of any deck. Just because it doesn't work within the scope of what we need something to, or just doesn't really, for whatever reason, excite us to use. Sorry, somebody's walking up the steps. She's got to talk about it. Doesn't make it a bad deck. And I want to be really... Now, sometimes that's the case. Sometimes they are just bad decks, right? There are some, not very many, but there have been decks that I've run across that I feel just are not constructed well. The artwork is maybe squeezed into a system that it doesn't work in. There's some reasons why I think that there are decks that are not constructed well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the case just because somebody says, this just didn't do it for me. Because somebody else might absolutely love this. I found for myself with flowers, I want bright colors. I want the color of the flower to really just be there. Because for me, some of my reaction to flower energy has to do with the colors as well. And so a deck, at the same time, getting a deck such as this one, which is the soul flowers, you can see it's quite bold, and the color is just sunshiny and summery, and I actually really loved this card. I didn't ever use this for like at the end of tarot readings for anybody. I use this for a daily card, and I really loved, I mean, look at this wood Botany grounding. Wood Botany energy is very physical, calming, and grounding. But that's so beautiful. Like, I love the colors of this deck. So I use this during the summer as a sort of a day, I don't ever do really daily card pulls, but you know, I pull it and set it out on my space and leave it there for a couple days until I felt like pulling another one kind of energy. And it worked really well for that. I'm very happy that I purchased this deck. So I'm pretty sure I have a walkthrough of this. But I really like this deck. The colors speak to me about flowers. And so it tapped into what I was looking for at that time. Because I bought a bunch of flowery plant style type decks and books and things. And this was, you know, this, you can just see. I mean, it's just color wise. It was what I was immersed in. So it makes sense. So yes, this one I really love. Again, I haven't used it enough to say whether or not I would love it if there was a 3-card pull or something like that, because I really didn't use it that way. I pretty much primarily used it pulling, and just, that one fell over, but you can buy from her these little wood that just have a slot in them. They're natural wood, and you can set a card in. Right now I'm using them for weavers, which fell over when I pulled the deck out. But I would just put it on there and, you know, have that there for a couple of days, and the color and whatever it was just brighten my day. And I'm sorry, there's dandelions on the front, so I'm sold. I'm sold. So that one I'm happy about. This one, not so much. And again, it's this beautiful deck. I just, this is going to go, I need to start a different pile. Goes back into there. Next one is Wild Moon. This is a lunar phase deck. And this is a hard one for me. I enjoyed it in one purpose, and then after that I just haven't used it. It's so beautiful. I love the box. I love the silver. I love the silver edging, very bright silver edging. And I love that you have basically a card for every phase of the moon. And so I used this for, I think, 2 months. And then on the back, it has the phase of the moon, a keyword, the influence that phase has, history of that phase, ritual that you could do for that phase, a crystal and a mantra, sometimes a plant. Yeah, there's herbs, sometimes a tea, and then always a mantra. I enjoyed this. I use a disc bound planner, and so I put a little slot in with a bag that I could, clear bag that I could slide the card in, and so every day I would rotate out to the next phase and kind of take a peek at what it had to say. And it was just part of my planning process, just kind of seeing it and sitting with the energy of it. And I enjoyed that for again, I did, I think, 2 months in a row, and just kind of got a feel for that every single day as the moon shifts, instead of just following sort of the full moon and the new moon and the quarters, perhaps, following the whole phase cycle. So in terms of doing that, I found it really useful. In terms of using it as an oracle, I didn't find it. I mean, you could use, obviously, the keywords, possibilities, sacred possibilities, peaceful connection and joyful surrender. But things like that don't tend to work for me when they are, so like for an astrology deck, I don't use astrology decks to just randomly pull things, because that energy isn't in play for me. The energy of whatever the moon is at right now is what's in play. And same thing with astrology. If I just use it as an oracle, it doesn't connect, because I'm thinking in my Libra head, I'm thinking, well, the sun is not in Scorpio, right? And so I use astrology decks very specifically to lay out what's going on above and be able to then connect those two cards of what's going on below. And this kind of has that same feel. It's really nice for learning and for journaling and that kind of thing, and going through the whole phase. But I wouldn't use it as an oracle deck. So once I did that a couple months, it's just kind of like, okay, It's pretty and it's nice, and I liked it for what I did with it, but I don't see using it in a long-term capacity. So kind of, this is, I saw that's not negative. I do like it for what it functioned as, but as an oracle deck, it just, and it doesn't call itself that. It says it's a lunar phase deck, and it is a lunar phase deck. So mixed feelings. This little deck is called the Wisdom of Trees Oracle by Jane Struthers. I actually love this little deck. I have not spent a lot of time with it, so I can't make a big judgment on it, other than it makes me happy every time I see it. There's just something about it. There's a sweetness to it that I really love. I do love the layout of the guidebook, and again, I haven't worked with it enough, so I'm going to have to come back to this after I've used it a little bit more. I like the layout. I like how they constructed it. I have found sometimes you go to the messages and you're kind of like, huh, or certain things within it, it kind of goes, huh. And I can't even give you an example right this moment. I know I'm not the only person. I think Tom Benjamin has said something similar. He really loves the deck, but he's thinking he's just going to write his own keywords and messages for it, and I think that's probably the direction that I would go with, especially, you know, you can pull out obviously the ones that are with the OMs, and then kind of build from there, and as well as, I'm not sure that the suits themselves quite work. For me, this just needs to be a tree deck, so I'm very tempted, and I love the backs of this. And it was a cheap deck. It's not great card stock, but for the price, it's just something really sweet about the energy. So I'm thinking what I'll probably do is trim these, take the borders off of this, and just use it as an oracle deck of trees, and kind of come up with my own keywords for, or just purely use the keywords here, because I think, you know, like there's mastery and construction. There's like a single keyword that I'm tempted just to write on it, or write on the back, or just make a listing out in my book. Because there is something about this deck that there is an energy about the artwork. There is a sweetness to it. Almost kind of feels similar to the, the tarot deck that, can't think of it. I can feel that it's gone. I don't know. There's something about this deck that's worth pursuing and worth using. I just need to work with it a little ways, and maybe modify how I work with it. So I'm not disappointed that I got it whatsoever. And like I said, every time I even see the box, it just kind of gives me that feeling of, oh. so yeah, there's that. Here we have the Celtic Shamans pack by John Matthews, and the art is by Jessica Potter, who also did the Greenwood Tarot. I have to say, I love this deck. I don't have the guidebook here. I wish I had the guidebooks over there. I love the guidebook on this deck. I love the system. There's a spread in there that I absolutely love. I do it in my shop. So I really like this. I'm not like 1,000% of a fan of the artwork, and the same thing with the Greenwood. I know people love the Greenwood, and I do too. But I have to say, sometimes there's like a little bit of, and this one is actually less than with the Greenwood. It all feels very similar. It's not my most favorite art. That's beautiful. It is a primitive style, which is gorgeous. That's what it's intended to be. But it's not my favorite kind of art. But it is beautiful and vibrant, and there is something compelling about her art that does feel very shamanic, that does feel very kind of going into the roots and entering the tree, that is really powerful. And so I am definitely no regrets on this one. Love the guidebook. I pretty much love every guidebook that John Matthews does. He's just so thorough. So this one actually goes in my cupboard of decks that have to stay out because I use them in reading. You know, I use them in my job, or in my from my shop. I'm gonna save this one for last. That's kind of, this one I think is gonna be longer than tarot, but I got more oracle decks. This is another of my flower ones. This is the Botanical Expressions, And I do love this deck. Not quite as much as I thought. Again, when I purchased all these flower decks and plant decks, I was really in a high color mode. And so this has a little bit more muted. It feels a little bit more winter in a beautiful way, but it just didn't feel like summer at the time. But, you know, I love quotes. And the reason I thought I'd love this so much is because I'm obsessed with the Lavish Earth, which is only not here because, again, I'm just doing decks that I purchased, and Patrick had given me that deck. So I love that deck because it's crystals and quotes. This is flowers and quotes. What's not to love? And I have done them together for a more ephemeral, fleeting energy compared to a very long, enduring energy of crystals, and it's beautiful. So I do love this, and I actually think I'll leave this out for winter because it does have a little bit more of a wintry feel to it. It just, at the time in summer, it just didn't shout summer. It didn't have that sort of summer energy. But so I need to give this one a little bit more of a chance. Because sometimes that happens, you know, you get things because of a specific reason and another deck really functions at that time, and so then they just kind of get set to the side. Doesn't mean you're never going to use them. It just means that it just doesn't have that, oh, I love you. So this, I think, needs maybe a little bit of winter love. We shall see how that goes. Goodness, oh my goodness, I'm trying to do this in just one run so I don't have to edit anything and I can just stick it up. But this is the Connected and Free, the Alchemist Oracle. This one I purchased because it was Patrick's fault, and I purchased this because there ended up being a shop in the US that had them, and so the shipping wasn't bad, and so I've not really spent a lot of time with it, but I do feel like there is, this is not a deck that I would get rid of, because I do feel like there's something there. There's something about this deck for me that has, and this should have at the time really worked, right? Because it does have those beautiful saturations of color. I love this card. But for whatever reason, I haven't really felt called to use this deck very much, and I feel like there's something there. Now, I will say what I do love is these chakra cards. So it comes with a chakra card for each of the chakras. And I love these. I love this as a placeholder to then put tarot cards down for a chakra reading. I love these I try to go every month, probably more like every 2 months. I like to go through a week spread. I've done it a couple times now where I pulled out, I have a set of chakra crystals. You can kind of see them right here. And so pulling that out, cleansing those, clearing that chakra in my own self, pulling a card and what do I need to work on that particular chakra. And so one a day for the 7 days. And that has been really a great experience for me, and something that I will continue to do, and these cards are beautiful for that. So I love the deck for the chakra cards, which I've seen a lot of videos where people kind of take the chakra cards out like what, I don't feel that, but that's one of the reasons I actually really like this deck. So I wouldn't get rid of it just because of that alone, but I do feel like there's something here. And I know a lot of people really love this deck. So I love this. There is some shadow here. And so I feel like its time will come. It's something I just need to spend a little time with. I just haven't done. So there's that. I think I'm going to leave this one out too. For just decks I want to play with this winter. Then we have the Fairy Enchantments deck, which I purchased from Ian Daniels. He had a Kickstarter program. And the funny thing is, clearly I love the book. This is all based on fairy tale and Celtic mythology lore. And I absolutely love this book. I don't use this a lot. I've used it for setting intentions, but he has also recently come out with a book, like an expanded book. And I think that's what I probably would have used more than the cards. It's gorgeous. I love the rose gold on it. The images on the back are, they're Ian Daniels. They're what you expect. Some are a little bit overly dramatic for me, but they're beautiful. Um, but I don't ever look at them. So I do use this for setting out intentions, and I have a video on it so you can see how you do it, but you basically pick 3 cards, and use the word from the top one for release, the second one, and then the third one. So release a secret in order for power to come. And then you might use some of the things that are here. And so that's how I tend to use this, is actually setting intentions. But I have other ways that I do that, so I don't get this out a lot. And then you can just use, if you're going to use just it as an oracle deck, you use the very bottom keyword. So this would be emotion, mystery, and power here with the Morgan, Flidis, and Murden. And then you would just use that as an oracle deck. I really haven't used it that way at all. For me, the power of this deck is in the guidebook and in all this information on the back. But that's just me personally, and he does have a book out, but I don't know. I have to look. I haven't looked into it more closely to see if that's just an expansion. Because as soon as I read this, I was like, there needs to be like an expansion of this. Like, I want to know more. And I mean, look at all those. I want to know more about that, because it's all pulled out of actual mythology and fairy tale, and that is so key to myself. So I need to look into the book, because I have a feeling that will be my jam. So again, this is not a deck that I would pass on, but I don't use it in an oracle sense. I don't use it as an oracle deck. Lastly, but no, not leastly, is the Weaver's Oracle. And again, I have a walkthrough of this. If you follow my live chats, you know how I feel about this. I absolutely love this deck. I use it. I don't use it as a standard oracle in terms of like pulling 3 cards. To be honest, the idea of using multiple cards from this deck is like overwhelming, because I feel like there's so much in a single card. So generally, I'm pulling and doing a reading for myself and pulling 1 weaver. I have a reading very specific. It's called a web reading. It's one I do for people, and I've had an amazing experience doing this for other people. And I pull 1 weaver's card and actually read her story, and then use other decks to pull for the further messages. So I've really only used this in that capacity. I've done quite a lot of these readings, so I have used it a lot, but in that capacity of using 1 weaver card. And then I very often will set, I know it's very disrespectful, it fell over because I pulled the deck out. But I then sit with that. So that generally, if I do it, and I often will do it for myself around either new moon or full moon, and generally I set, this was one I recently sat with, generally I will leave that up for a month. It's not, for me, again, everybody's different. I love this one as well. It's less about... It's energy that's staying. There's something I need to work with on a deeper level that's going to be something that stays for a while, versus just kind of a quick message that I might be needing for that day. Again, somebody else might say something completely opposite. This is just for me personally. And also for me, while I absolutely love the images, and I do, there's nothing that I'm saying negative about these images, but for me, this deck is much less about the cards and much more about the guidebook, which is over there. But there is a story for each one of these cards, for each of these shamans, each of these Udagons, each of the weavers. There is a story, and that for me, truth and story, I'm a story person. The power of this deck for me lies in those stories, and to an amazing degree. So this is the most I've ever paid for an Oracle deck for sure. So it is not a cheap deck, and people point that out whenever I talk about it. I'm aware. I did pay for mine. I did have a little bit of a discount, but I paid more than I've ever paid for an Oracle deck, and it's for me worth every penny. Now again, I use it in a professional sense as well as a private sense, so it makes, it makes obviously more sense for me. But I have zero regrets for purchasing this deck, and I know this is a deck that I will be working with. This and the Weaver Oracle and the Shamans Oracle have kind of just been these three decks that I don't even keep them with my regular decks. They kind of stay down in a case that I have of sort of more personal working kind of earthy down in the roots decks. So they don't even, they don't get put in with my other decks. They're kind of down in this more of a working space. So that's yeah, love those decks. Zero regrets. I can't even speak now. I've talked too much. So I think that is everything. Again, as with, having forgotten about the Yanasa Yao, I'm sure somebody's going to say, what about such and such? Just remember, people have given me Oracle decks, and so like the Days of Creation, massively in love with it. I'm going to do it I tried to do updates. So what I haven't spoken about today, I will try to do updates on and kind of make sure, go through my list of deck reviews and make sure I've done some kind of an update on everything to kind of round off the year. So there are other decks like that, but these are decks that I've purchased in this past year, and how do I feel about it. So you can probably tell if you've watched the tarot one that there's a little more hit and miss and a little more ambiguousness to the oracles that I've purchased, and that doesn't surprise me because I don't work with Oracle a lot by itself until the Days of Creation, the Weaver's Oracle, the Shaman's Oracle. Those, I have two readings in my shop now that are, the web I do pull 3 tarot cards, but the main reading is Oracle, and the ancestor reading the whole thing is Oracle, and that's not primary. I'm primarily will have tarot, and I'll pull an Oracle card. There are a couple exceptions to that. I have a couple systems of oracles that I love, such as that I use a lot: Chronicles of Destiny, the Madame Endora's, those kind of systemy kinds of that I do in my shop, but I don't do them very often, and so those 3, are clearly ones that are quite powerful for me. So just that's what my point being is, that Oracle is just one of those things that's a little more hit or miss for me. It's harder for me to find ones that I'm just like, and primarily it's because, and I know people get so tired of me saying it, but one can hit stop, right? Primarily my issues are with balance. I find it hard to, or rather pointless sometimes, to pull cards that I know are going to say, yes, you're wonderful. And we need those sometimes. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But as a reader, if somebody's coming to me, which they are, like everybody that comes to me for a reading has a question, right? They need to know something. They have a question. They have a focus that they need to know. And if I know that the cards that I'm going to pull are just going to say, you're right where you need to be, everything's going to work out, everything's coming up roses, that to me isn't providing them a service, because that, they could get their own affirmation deck and pull something to say, go you, right? So in some ways, I think affirmation decks tend to work a little bit better as using them for your own self. Or as a addition, and that's the key for me. I do use affirmation decks in my practice, but it tends to be, okay, we've just done a bunch of hard work, right? With a tarot reading or something like that. Let's kind of pull something that's going to give us that empowerment, a supportive energy, that's going to kind of give us an addition to the message that we've done the work as. I definitely use them that way. But in terms of like full-on readings, I need some balance before. If I'm going to use it to answer somebody's question or to really dig into a situation, then I need to have some balance. I need equal opportunity for, this is a little bit difficult, but this is how we're going to manage it. So I need a little bit more of that. And I find that I also really love structure, right? If you've watched my channel, I love tarot. It's because of the structure. I love Lenormand because of the structure that's there. I love Deste way because there's a structure there. A lot of the things that I tend to really get into have a very specific system and structure in place. And so when decks don't have that structure, it has less use for me. For me, again, this is just personal. Somebody could come and say the exact opposite. They love the lack of structure in Oracle decks, and feel hampered by the structure of tarot. Everybody comes at things differently. So finding decks that kind of hit that sweet spot for me in Oracle is a little bit harder. And so I always know that it's going to be hit and miss when I purchase Oracle decks as to whether or not they're going to be like, oh, yes. So anyways, I'm going to stop babbling. Hopefully this has helped. People seem to have liked the kind of going and recapping the tarot. So this kind of recaps the rest of the decks that I purchased this year, barring things that I've forgotten, which is very possible. And so I look forward to seeing you guys all later.